Good evening and welcome to the third MG EVs community podcast of 2024. We're streaming live on Monday, the 10th of June. We're here to discuss MG EVs and we're hoping to inform and entertain you for about an hour or so. Now, once again, unfortunately, Dave Stewart can't make it tonight, but don't worry, he's still with us. And I promise he's not buried under my patio and he'll return soon. I'm Tom Sedge, T Sedge on the forum. I live in Devon and I'm currently driving this MG4 long-range trophy that you see behind me. So joining us this week, we have from Wigan in England, Les Burrows. Hi, Les.
Hi, everybody. I'm Les Burrows from Wigan. Currently driving an MG5 trophy, sorry. And my wife drives an MG4 SR.
Great, welcome, Les. And from Swindon in England, we have Vince Williams. Hi, Vince.
Hi, everybody. My name is Vince Williams, Vince31 on the forum. I'm driving this black MG ZS EV at the moment. Had that 2 years. Before that, I had the Mark 1 MG ZS EV back from 2019.
Excellent. Good to see you again, Vince. And of course, from Chorley Group MG in England, the Innovation Development Manager, Miles Roberts, joins us once again. Welcome, Miles.
Oh, thank you very much, Tom. And good evening, everyone. Miles Roberts, CG on the forum. Currently driving pretty much anything that's got an electric motor in it. So we have a video reviews channel as well on YouTube called Chorley Group. So see MG reviews on there.
Great, and make sure you check that out. So if you're watching live, thank you very much for joining us. And please click the like button and join in on the discussion in the chat window. And if you're watching later on, thank you for choosing to watch this video and please subscribe so you get a notification when we go live next time. So in tonight's podcast, we'll be discussing three main things. We're going to do some quick updates on the new MG EVs that are coming out. And we'll be looking at how MG EVs have been received in the news and what people think of them and how MG is doing generally. And then we'll look at some hot topics from the forums across the MG4, MG5, MG ZS. Before we get to that, many thanks to our premium members. Thanks to Sloucher, MG BGT2ZS. Thanks to Very Fat Bloke, Evie Cog, Whiskery, Lagerbaloo, and Big Bear. And if you like what we do at MG EVs, please support us by becoming a premium member. Right, so on to our first topic, new MG EVs. So, Miles, we've got some news on the HS, I understand.
Yeah, so it's been reported in the press recently that MG is going to unveil the new HS at Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is due to run from the 11th to the 14th of July. The new MG HS is a completely new vehicle, but it's still based on the it's on a petrol type chassis. It's not on one of the EV only chassis. Early indications are that it's going to have a battery range in excess of 70 miles on the plug-in hybrid.
Wow. So
potentially we're looking at really quite a decent range for a plug-in hybrid, and it's one that would enable it to come under the new 5% benefit in kind for company car tax purposes.
I haven't heard about that. Could you just explain those rules for everyone?
Yeah, so benefit in kind for company car drivers. There was a time when plug-in hybrids and electric vehicles were on the same tax strategy. And that's time when you saw a lot of Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrids, for example, were being used because they were all 2% benefit in kind.
Right.
And then they changed.
Sorry, just so I understand it. That's how you control. That's a percentage of the car's the payment or the car's value that goes on your salary.
Try and put it in the calculation for you. So basically, it's the amount of tax you would pay per year. So the benefit in kind is how much benefit you've got. So if it was a £10,000 car, which it wouldn't be, but if it was a £10,000 car and it was 2% benefit in kind, then that'd be 2% of £10,000.
Right,
200 quid a year is the benefit, and what that means, that's then added to your salary as effectively taken off your tax code. So if you're allowed to earn £50,000 before you start paying the higher rate of income tax. Effectively, if you were earning 50,000, you're now earning £50,200, and therefore you pay a bit more tax on that £200.
Right.
Or if you're like, if you're 49,800 and then you pay an extra £200, that might push you into the next tax bracket effectively. So the benefit in kind is key for company car drivers because it's how much you pay. I mean, for example, on a £40,000 EV, which is typical sort of EV money for, well, it's top endish for obviously for MGs, but for a lot of other brands, it's sort of fairly standard for company cars. With it being 2% benefit in kind, effectively you're only paying sort of £800 a year. But that's not the tax you pay. You pay your tax rate on £800, and you pay it per month. So if it was, a 20% tax rate, or so a 22% tax rate on on £800, that means that effectively it's costing you. So if you can do the maths, £176 a year, which divided by 12 means you're paying £14 a month. So it's sod all basically as a tax. Whereas if you're in a petrol or diesel car or a hybrid car, even it goes on emissions. And so if you're a plug-in hybrid HS driver, for example, that's currently, I think, 13% benefit in kind. And again, if that car was there or thereabouts, say 36 grand, that means you're paying £4,680 benefit in kind, which again, multiplied by your tax rate, if you're a lower rate taxpayer, means it's costing you £1,000 a year, which is still not an awful lot, I suppose, but it does mean it's £85 a month. So it's more. And of course, if you're a 40% taxpayer, it's going to be costing you a lot more. So for people who have larger company cars and more luxurious company cars, because they're in a higher earning threshold as it is, it has an effect. It also affects things like salary sacrifice as well. So if you get a salary sacrifice car, although you pay for that car out of your salary before the tax is taken, which helps to reduce the amount of tax you pay overall, you then get benefit in kind on top of it. So at the moment, it only really makes sense to get a electric vehicle on a salary sacrifice, because if you've got a petrol car, the saving on tax would then get cancelled out by your benefit in kind.
Right.
Gotcha. Anyway, the purpose of the new taxation is that to try and encourage car manufacturers to have to create plug-in hybrids which are more usable range and therefore are more likely to be used on EV mode, rather than these compliance cars where they only did sort of 15 miles on electric and then after that it was petrol, so nobody bothered charging them up and they all just drove around on petrol. But instead they've got to have a reasonable range. So I think it's got to be over 60 miles of EV range, and then it drops into lower percentage category. It gets it down to 5%, which again, on a £40,000 car means that it can be a difference of sort of £60 a month, which is a reasonable saving. If you're also going to be obviously able to drive the car further on electric, so it means it's win-win.
Yeah.
So that's being announced at Goodwood Festival of Speed. And I think that the very early preview I saw back in January at a dealer conference wasn't representative externally of how it's actually going to look. It had some bumpers off some other Chinese model that was fixed to it and all this sort of stuff. So it wasn't finished, but the interior did look quite a few progressions on from where the current HS is. The current HS has got a lovely interior, to be fair. The seats particularly I really like, but the dashboard perhaps looks a little bit older in terms of compared to the more modern MGs.
So it's kind of pre-minimalist modern screen.
So there's going to be a couple of screens on there, 2 or 3 screens on the dashboard.
Because some folks like the more traditional style of lots of buttons and traditional dials, and some don't. So I guess
I think from my memory of it was it looks a little bit more like a Nissan Aria dashboard, so a bit more minimalistic and sort of modern design. It looked very nice, to be fair, and I say we get unveiled at Goodwood, so looking forward to that, and we'll hopefully hear the pricing, etc., at the same time as well.
Why hasn't this been created as a full EV?
So the HS is a very good seller at the moment. It works well for lots of people. It's a very competitively priced car for the size of it. Size-wise, it's probably slightly bigger than a Qashqai, but its price is lower. So they've kept this as a it's going to be offered as a plug-in hybrid, as it is currently. It's going to be offered as a petrol-only car, and it's also going to be eventually offered as a hybrid as well. It's like a self-charging
Right.
hybrid.
Right.
And they're doing that because basically the platform that it's on supports that technology. It's not in any masses of investment, and it means that the car can still be competitively priced. And I think, to be fair, in the next couple of years, there is quite a lot of hedging of bets in terms of, because of the different timelines across Europe and across the world in terms of when electrification is happening. There is still a requirement for this sort of vehicle, I think. But also, there is plans to bring when the Marvel R is launched, is facelifted and thoroughly facelifted, they'll make it in right-hand drive. And effectively, the Marvel R is HS sized, so a fully EV HS is effectively the Marvel R. So that's due.
So it'll be coming, but maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
I think probably hit by next year. To be fair, I think
as soon as that. Okay.
Yeah, by summer next year, we'll have quite a lot of new cars coming, and in fact,
yes.
So the other sort of things to look out for is that, as I mentioned before in the chat, the MG4 and MG ZS EV facelifts are due into dealerships by March next year. So they're going to be obviously announced probably at the end of this year. You'll get to see them then. But and they're currently available to free order. They're not on run out or anything like that. But there is within the next sort of 12 months they will both be facelifted.
Do we know how big that's going to be in the case of each car? I know you won't have any precise details, but I
haven't seen either.
So we don't know if it's like a major facelift or a minor tweak.
I believe that the ZS is going onto the same platform as the 4, so it's going to go on the EV platform. So there will still be an MG ZS petrol car, but that will be on a different platform to the ZS EV.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be probably continuing the existing platform, I guess. Or right. So it's likely
it's going to be one that involves hybrid.
Right. Very probably the estate will come, won't it?
Sorry, Les.
I say very probably at the same time the estate model will turn up.
Yeah, well, again, there may be an announcement made about the MG5, running out at the end of this year and being replaced by the MG4 estate if and when that comes next year.
So I would assume then that the ZS EV would like to change considerably. If it's changing platform, that will have a completely different interior.
I would have thought so. Yeah, I mean,
whereas the MG4 is likely to be less of a change. Given that it's already on the platform.
Probably fair, yeah. Fair? I mean, I haven't seen either of the cars, but I think that the MG4 obviously is not long been launched. There are a few tweaks that they are likely to make. They made another things like the rear wiper obviously was added, during production. There may be some. I think it might be a subtle change. It might be things like they make the interior screens different, bigger or whatever, or and that sort of thing. I don't think there's going to be any major change in the MG4, but I think that the obviously addition of an estate is what we've heard rumored before as well.
Yeah.
Miles, do you think that the new ZS EV and MG4 on the new platform, do you think they will be more OTA capable over the air updates?
I'd like to say yes, but I don't know I don't know the technical reasons as to why they haven't done OTA already. Whether it's due to, you've seen the issues we've had when they've been trying to load updates in the workshop and things have gone wrong. I can only imagine the amount of trouble we get in if people doing this on the driveway and the sim signal went or whatever, and it just it would fail. So I think at the moment it's just a case of reliability at the moment as to why they're not doing OTA. I appreciate doing it on multiple other brands around the world. My wife's Volvo gets updates every couple of months.
But there's a distinction, isn't there? Because over the air updates for the MG4 were only ever promised for infotainment only, weren't they? So that's not that everything in the car, all the systems, the various modules.
No, but I mean, as
different levels of these systems.
My wife's car gets updates for pretty much everything over the air, like as Tesla's doing.
Yeah, like a Tesla.
Yeah. I think that. I suppose it's what I've got a Hyundai that doesn't get over the air updates apart from the infotainment. In fact, I've just got a recall on my Ioniq 5 for the onboard charger, the ICCU, as needs a software update. It doesn't need a replacement, thankfully. It doesn't need a software update because there's been various reports of 12-volt batteries dying and cars going into fail-safe mode and things like that. So,
Right.
yeah, I think there's, obviously if Hyundai could have done an over-the-air update rather than take me into the nearest dealer, which is 50 miles away from me, it would have probably been better.
Yeah, that would be better. I did hear somebody saying that they thought the Cyberster would come with over-the-air updates, but that's different tech, I think, isn't it, for the
We
interior
haven't had
systems?
any news on that yet, so I can't confirm or deny.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Apologies.
Okay. I went to the garden centre the other day, and slap bang in the middle was an MG promotion, and the MG3 Hybrid Plus was out there being sold. So it's arrived, it's here. I mean, other people may have seen one. Any reaction? I mean, are they selling? A lot of interest?
I mean, I obviously when the car came in, I did a video review on our channel, and I have to say I was very impressed with it. Actually, I've driven a lot of hybrids from different brands. In one of my previous roles, I had a Toyota Auris hybrid for many years. So we used to do training with that, and I used to drive it quite a bit. And all of the way the Toyotas drive with the electronic CVT gearbox makes me glad that hydrogen technology isn't going to take off, because when I drove a Toyota Mirai, it drives the same as a Prius, and that's not a compliment. The sort of the way you put your foot down on the accelerator and a lot of revs happen, and then it eventually starts picking up speed is not something I particularly like. The MG3 Hybrid Plus has got a 3-speed automatic gearbox, which doesn't sound like a lot. It sounds like the sort of thing you'd have had in the 1960s Ford. But actually, because they've got the electric motor in there as well, it kind of feels like about a 7 or 8-speed box, because when it's changing between the ratios, the electric motor does a lot of heavy lifting. The electric motor is about 108 brake horsepower, something like that. So it's a fair chunky electric for a hybrid. It's quite a big electric motor. A lot of hybrids have only got sort of 30 or 40 or 50 brake horsepower electric motors. So this can actually do a lot more work with the electric motor, and it does drive really, really well. It is still a hybrid. It's still, it's a self-charging hybrid, so you self-charge it by going to a petrol station. But it does drive quite well, and I think competitively priced, 18.5 grand start price, 20.5 for the top spec, compared to an entry-level Yaris hybrid, which is about 22 grand. So I think it's got a lot of kit on it. It's a very nicely finished car. It basically feels like a MG4 they put in a boil wash. It's got the same drive mode selector, rotary selector for the gears, similar sort of dash layout and everything. So yeah, if you put earplugs in, you probably wouldn't actually think you're in an MG3 rather than MG4. There's very little difference about it. Obviously, it's front wheel drive rather than rear wheel drive. And it is a bit smaller, but no, I think it's quite a nicely put together little car, and I think it shows that. Obviously, whilst not electrified at the moment, I think that it's a model that would suit electrification in the future if MG.
I was seeing a lot of positive reviews saying about the drive, the performance, the economy, the difference between that and the older MG3.
Oh, night and day. The old MG3. I had one once when my car was lent out to a customer, and the MG3, I only drove it 20 miles home, 20 miles back to work. But it cost me about a tenner in fuel. It was
it weren't very efficient.
They were, no, not over the Pennines. When you go up on a hilly route, you had to thrash the pants off it. So it wasn't the most efficient car at all. But yeah, no, I think that the new MG3 Hybrid, massive improvement in terms of quality. Obviously, it's taken a step up in price, but that's to be expected. But I think it's still very competitively priced for the type of competition it's up against.
Great. And the Cyberster, no news yet, or no new news on when? I think 1 or 2 have started arriving in the UK in the right-hand drive UK spec form.
Yeah, there's a couple that are going around the UK doing a bit of a tour at the moment. Dealerships didn't previously have them. All the Cyberster dealerships which have signed up to take it, because the MG didn't offer. Well, they offered it to everyone, but they said in order to have it, you need to have certain criteria. Yeah, you need to have a big enough showroom to fit it. You need to have room for us to put this new showroom what we call CI into, or basically the way the showroom looks. So there's basically like a wooden plinth that the car will go on, with like a wall behind it with some like, living wall style things on, different paint colors, and trying to make it look bougie, I suppose. But it's you had to basically sign up to take that, and that's an investment from the dealership. So not all dealerships have signed up to do it, and some don't have the physical space available to put that in. So, for example, our Burnley branch at the moment doesn't have the space, and therefore won't be taking the Cyberster in the showroom. But our Blackpool, which is just to open shortly, and Chorley branches will have the Cyberster area. But yeah, so the cars are supposed to put this all this new kit is supposed to go in our showroom in the next month or so, and then the cars should start arriving July-ish. So again, I imagine that Goodwood Festival of Speed will probably the time when we hear. Normally they bring it out at Goodwood and then it'd be in our showroom like a week later or something. So based on what they do.
So the message for people is, it may not be in your local dealer, but if it isn't, it will be in a bigger dealer somewhere nearby. So have a look around.
And it'll show you on the mg.co.uk dealer locator map where the Cyberster dealers are.
Yeah. Great.
I think the car will sell itself. I don't think it needs all that showroom palaver. Quite honestly, I think people walk in and see it and they go, "Whoa, I'm having one of these."
Because you've been and sat in one, haven't you, Les?
I've been in it. Yeah, it's just nice. It's very nice. I've sat in it. Not driven it, but I've sat in it.
The price point they're putting it up against things like Jaguar F-Type, Porsche, Boxster, the Toyota Supra, BMW Z4 sort of thing. So I think they're trying to make the clientele who would feel like they would normally buy that sort of car feel a bit more at home in the MG showroom, where previously as getting on board as an MG dealer a few years ago, it was really easy. Basically, you had to paint one wall red and have room for some cars. That was basically that was all you had to do. I'd stick an MG logo on the wall like that. And as MG has grown as a brand, they've tried to create a brand identity and a bit more of a sort of showroom ambiance, which will try and give some standardization across the groups, so that when people, in the same way as when you go to a BMW dealer or an Audi dealer, you feel like you know that you're in that brand. MG is trying to do something similar with MG, and that's involved, sadly, this month, quite a few quite well-known MG dealers closing their doors because the level of investment that's been required, they didn't feel was worthy of the extra expenditure. And it's a really difficult time for retail dealerships, particularly because, well, let's be frank, a lot of the cars that we sell today, these electric vehicles, are being sold to fleets. They're being sold to salary sacrifice firms. They're being sold to lease companies. They're not being sold to Joe Blogs that walks into the showroom. So, whereas previously as a car dealership, you'd make a lot of money by someone walking into your showroom and asking questions, and then you'd make your markup on the retail price. You'd take a part exchange, and you might make some money on that as well. A lot of the cars that we sell today are being sold through fleet departments, which just go off they get PDI'd and go off on a transporter to someone elsewhere, and they don't even actually walk into the showroom. So to spend a chunk of money on a showroom when you're not actually having people footfall into the showroom it's a tricky weighing scales to sort of think, is it worth doing?
Yeah, and I guess when the smaller dealers got in, it was easy to get in and become an MG dealer, as you said, and so it was probably a good thing to get into at the time, and be able to carve out a niche competing against the bigger guys. But now MG is going up market and bigger scale. You need those economies of scale to make it work in business terms, I guess.
Yeah, and it's also with the financing of the cars. So, like when we get stock delivered to our site, we're expected to hold 100 cars per branch in stock. You've got to pay for those cars. You've got to have the cash flow to be able to finance those. And for some of the smaller dealerships who, we're lucky we've got 12 sites now. So, we've got a big dealership room. So we've got more finance channels open to us. But when you're a small family-owned business, and you're being asked to finance, possibly, several £1 million worth of cars, it can, and with the interest rates being as high as they are at the moment as well, the stocking fees can be, £500 a month. If you've got a car in stock for 2 months, you've not got any profit in it, so it's
that's true.
It's a big risk. Yeah. Okay. Any news on any of the other models we've talked about in the past, the MG S9 or the IM-L6 or anything?
So not as yet, no. So my understanding is that obviously we're getting the Cyberster this summer. There'll be an announcement at the MG4 and the MG ZS at the end of the year with them coming to the showrooms in March. There is a likelihood that we're going to get the MG Marvel R and probably a saloon car, which may be the ones that were at Geneva. Middle of next summer next year, I'm talking, but it's a bit too far in the future for me to look into my crystal ball with any sort of certainty at the moment.
Well, I mean, I'm being greedy because we're absolutely drowning and swimming in MG EVs at the moment. I mean, it's amazing the number of models that have come out, but they did it very nice, some of those. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thank you for that update. Let's move on and talk a little bit then about MG EVs in the news, because we had a bit of a look around at some of the reviews that have been out there on different models, and MG does seem to be doing pretty well, both in terms of the range of coverage and the favorability, the rating that they get. So, I mean, we've now got, if we start with the Cyberster, we've got the initial first drives and reviews coming out. So, we've got the TopGear magazine review, which gave it 8 out of 10. And Tom Ford had a bit of a first drive and he really liked it. And one of the interesting things that I saw that he said that, I mean, like a lot of people, loved the space, loved the drive, loved the interior, loved the looks, loved the roof, liked the doors, didn't think there'd be a problem, because I think a lot of people were worried that the doors would be an issue, would be a pain, would be a fancy thing, look nice once or twice, but then be difficult to live with. But he said no. But what he said that I thought was particularly interesting was that actually said, well, this is a real competitor for the Boxster, because you could have a Boxster if you really wanted the best hardcore driving experience, handling, performance. But actually, what you probably want is something that's a bit more relaxed, a bit more of a fast GT, a bit more practical, a bit easier to live with. And that's where he was talking about the Cyberster, which I would imagine is exactly what MG was hoping for in terms of the reaction and where they were targeting it. What do the rest of you think?
I mean, I'll just I think it's a great looking car. I think that they've done a really good job. They actually employed an F1 engineer in the suspension settings. So, although I've not driven it myself, I'm led to believe that it actually handles really well, which is useful, because if anyone remembers the original MG ZS EV, that was a little bit on the floaty, bouncy sort of side. Whereas obviously with the Cyberster, you don't really want that sort of handling. So, I'm quite pleasantly hopeful, surprised, quite optimistic that the car's going to drive as well as it looks. And certainly from the review videos that I've seen, I say from Tom Ford and from others, I saw the Drive Electric put their video review out this week as well. It seems to be getting all the right feedback, and certainly I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about it, which is unheard of. I mean, MG a few years ago, if you'd had a TopGear review from MG, pick any of them up to the MG4 coming out, all of them basically were sort of, must try harder, 2.5 out of 5 or whatever, or 5 out of 10. It was nothing was
cheap and cheerful, but that's what you get, kind of thing.
Very similar to the sort of reviews that Skoda used to get back in the early 90s, like Kia used to get in sort of mid 2000s. And of course,
I think it did start changing before that, though, because the 5 got very good reviews when it came out, and then the later version of the ZS. But I know what you mean. Yeah,
I think the 5 got the reviews.
I
think the 5 got the excellent reviews it got at the beginning, because it was the only estate on the market apart from the Taycan.
Yes.
And it was the only one that was available. And there's lots of people, including myself, who still like an estate car. And this was the one to go for, because it was the only one that was available. As regards to the Cyberster, the thing I liked about it, it was comfortable to sit in, quite nice. I didn't drive it, obviously, but it was a nice, comfortable driving position. And everything was to hand, more or less. You could find where everything was once you'd been in it 2 minutes. But the thing I did like about it was the amount of space to carry stuff. The boot was amazing for me for what it is. I thought you could get at least 3 or 4 hand luggage size, you know, flight bags in there, or perhaps a set of golf clubs or something without a problem.
Yes.
It was good. The boot. I was quite surprised at the boot. I really was surprised at the boot. It amazed me.
I think that's the main thing. I mean, the only criticism I've sort of heard is, oh well, it's not a lightweight, small MX5 style.
No,
which it isn't. It's a bigger GT convertible.
Yeah. It's a very shallow boot. The boot's quite shallow, but it goes back a long way, so you could slide stuff into it. I was amazed at the luggage space in it. I was, for sure.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see the range comments that come in when the public get it out there, and I think it's 275 miles for the long range, off the top of my head.
Yeah, 275 if you go for the GT. They're claiming 313, I think, for the rear-wheel drive.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they're both the UK ones only have the 77 kilowatt-hour battery, so we're going to get better range than. I mean, they'll be cheaper, the 64 kilowatt-hour versions in other markets, but it should give a very good range. It should be good.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing great things about the handling, the performance to drive, and that's mostly people driving the single motor version at the moment. These are not reviews, and they're only first drives. So yeah, looking really good. So very exciting for that coming. And then if we also pick out the MG4 review that TopGear did a little while back. That was, and as you said, Miles, that really kind of changed the benchmark for what you could expect from an MG EV. And then since then we've had the X-Power, which has been, and I'm still amazed. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying, oh well, the X-Power, it's just really fast. It's a one-trick pony. That's all it does. It's otherwise the same as the standard car, which is not quite true because you've got bigger brakes and other changes. But there's still nothing to match it for value. I mean, yes, you've got these some fantastic competitors coming out, the N series Hyundais, but they're 60 grand.
Yes, I mean, nothing gives you that much performance for that price on the market. Nothing.
So judge it by the price tag, not by the competition.
Recently,
yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
and it was and that's 641 brake horsepower.
Yes.
So is 3.4 seconds, which is not drastically faster than 3.8 seconds the X-Power, but it's 65 grand, not 36.
Yeah.
So you can almost have 2 X-Powers for the price of one.
Well, it's not 36 as well, because a lot of people have been picking them up for 32, 33.
Oh yeah. So in this, I mean,
on Affinity,
the 5N is the car that I drove was the top spec, pan roof, all the rest of it. It was gorgeous. It was really nice. Turns out that can be a bit of a handful if you're not very experienced in driving. I was fine 2 days later.
I bet.
I was off.
Oops.
By accelerating to 60 miles an hour on a 30 zone in 2 seconds, going around a corner sideways and wrapping it around a lamppost. Well, I think the X-Power in our experience hasn't been wrapped yet. So hopefully that means that it's slightly more capable, even though that on paper the Ioniq has lots and it's got the massive wide Pirelli 21-inch wheels and tires and stuff, and in theory it's got really clever electronics, but it turns out slightly damp road plus inexperienced driver equals crash sideways. So I think that there are and again 65 grand car, you gutted about it. 35 grand car, you still gutted about it, but you could buy a replacement with a change. So I think that the X-Power is a storming car, and one thing that I'm hoping to do when the Cyberster comes in, my plan is to we're now getting a replacement Ioniq 5N, is to do a track video where we compare the Cyberster GT to the Ioniq 5N to the
so that's the dual motor Cyberster.
Yeah, to the X-Power MG4. And also probably compare it against something like an Audi RS6 as well, and just sort of put the 4 around the track, and just sort of say look, for the money, this Audi RS6 is £110,000.
That'd be bloody good.
You know, the Ioniq 5N is £65,000. The 60 grand for the Cyberster, and we've got 36 for the thing. Where pound for pound, if there's a second in it on a track,
The X-Pulse one.
Yeah.
If you look at it pound for pound, the X-Pulse one, there's no danger about that. You're not going to get anything at that value. Not at that price for that sort of performance. Oof, unbelievable.
I'm still trying to insurance this though, because the company insurance, when I told them I wanted to do a track day involving 4 cars with over 450 horsepower each, the response was, let me get back to you. So
yeah, it could be tricky. Yeah, I mean that Ioniq 5N looks amazing, but at that price, I mean, how many people are going to buy them?
It's a lot of money.
It's not exactly
it's a lot of money. But again, if you compare against the cars up against like the Audi RS6, it's competitively priced. It's 65 versus 110 or whatever. So it is still.
Yeah, well, their price, those kind of cars just gone silly price. It's like the Taycans, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. We're seeing that with the depreciation of those. That they're worth a small fraction of what they were originally.
Oh yeah.
The
depreciation on it is massive. It's massive. It is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and just sort of rounding this off, then we saw there was a couple of other good reviews. One of the MG5, CarWow review, which is worth bringing up to show people. And we also had an MG ZS review from WhatCar. But again, the MG is getting a high rating in all of these, and good. Instead of people are saying lots and lots of positive things and maybe one or two few criticisms, but we're now talking about with the MG4 estate coming out, that's going to be a new replacement of that. We're already on the second generation of MG5. We're on is it the second version of the ZS EV?
Yep.
Gen 2 we're on.
Yeah.
We got and there'll be a Gen 3. So I mean, it's like Christmas, Christmas and birthday all over again, isn't it? The pace at which they're coming out. I mean, I know there's a huge amount of other manufacturers doing a lot of things, but MG do seem to be, the sheer volume of new models and the speed at which they can bring them out does seem to be pretty amazing to me.
I think that's the true of all Chinese manufacturers, though, is that they have quite short cycle lengths. So, a traditional
they don't make them for long.
Duke was out in the same format for about 9 years before it was facelifted, and Qashqai is typically sort of 6 years between facelifts. And now, actually, we've had Qashqai just been facelifted this last month because they've updated it. It's less than 2 years since it was last facelifted, but they've done a facelift for 2 years, which is unusual. And I think part of that is down to the pressure that existing manufacturers are feeling from the East, that they've got to keep their products fresh because there's always a new model on the horizon. And so, in the land of the rising sun, they don't really sort of sleep too much. I think they just keep, rest on the laurels. They just keep getting the pen and paper out and going, okay, we're going to tweak this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this.
Constantly innovating, yeah.
I think that also it's like Nissan have spent, they've not made a Nissan Leaf since March. They basically pre-built a whole load, and that's what's going to carry them through the rest of this year. Because from March this year through till December, they're changing the production line from old Leaf to take a new EV, the new Leaf. And also to be capable of doing the new Qashqai, new EV, and the new Duke EV at Sunderland.
Yep.
But that's 9 months of non-production. Whereas in China, they seem to be able to reconfigure their...
the whole model come out and be released and then superseded in that time.
Yeah, it's like when the MG3 came out, they sort of announced it, showed us a preview, and then the car was out at dealers within a month or two. It's quite startling how fast they can get these cars out and actually in showrooms, whereas a lot of legacy manufacturers, it's usually sort of 6 to 9 months from, and the Nissan arrived about 2 years from when they showed us it to when it finally came out.
Yeah, it's just a different cycle. Yeah, and talking about what people would like, so Peter Urquhart in the chat is saying that he'd love to see a sunroof on the MG4. Don't know what the prospect.
Yeah,
MG
I would as well.
doing much in the way of sunroofs. We had sunroof on the ZS EV.
Yeah.
Did have the ZS, yeah. Did have, not anymore.
They both had, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they got really nice sunroofs in the ZS, or they had really nice sunroofs in the ZS, full length ones. But yeah, I don't know what happened. They stopped putting sunroofs in cars. I don't know if it was a cost saving measure or weight saving, or whether just a fallout with the supplier over in China. I don't know, but they haven't put sunroofs in a lot of cars recently. I think that that new saloon EV, when it comes, that was shown at Geneva with like a full glass roof that goes all the way back, like sort of Tesla Model 3 style.
Right.
That there may be a resurgence in things of glass roofs in the future.
And also, I mean, just coming back briefly to the Cyberster for a moment. So one of the things I noticed was that I think it's coming on. The UK ones were coming with Pirelli P0 tires, so they weren't scrimping on on the rubber that they're putting on the cars, which was something that I think some X-Power owners have said, we've got a premium tire, not a performance tire, and it'd be nicer to have a better tire on the car. So it's good to see that they're doing that. When you're paying the extra money, you're going to get the best.
Yeah, I think they have to be fair, when it's, as a £50,000-60,000 car. I think people have that expectation of
decent set of tires.
Being decent set of tires, and particularly when you've got 500 horsepower.
But one other point on that, Tom, before you go off it, is the Cyberster's got a sunroof.
Well, of course. That's a very good point. Yeah. Okay. Great. So all looking brilliant in MG EV space. Lots of new things coming out. Lots of new toys. If only we had the money to buy them all. So let's move on to our third topic then, to hot topics from the forums. Now, before we dive into it, do remember we've got a new dedicated area for the MG3 Hybrid Plus, if you're interested in that. Don't forget we've got an EV solar battery tariff forum, and don't forget our free classified ads area if you're looking to buy and sell. And thanks again to Stuart and the team for all of these improvements that have come out recently. Now, let's talk about the biggest issue that seems to be live in the MG5, MG ZS world, which is this ability to charge on a Tesla supercharger or not, and the hardware and or software or not requirements. Now, there's been some development. So Les and Miles, if you could, between you, explain the problem and what we've learned recently about the solution.
Well, I already picked up on the ZS a couple of weeks ago. I didn't realise the ZS had a problem. I thought the early ZS I knew wouldn't charge, but I thought the later one would.
Yeah.
But the trophy models. Yours will it, Vince?
Yeah, mine does.
I thought it did. I thought they did.
Yeah.
I was surprised when I seen on the forum this thread for the ZS not charging on Tesla.
It didn't though. It didn't a year ago, and it was only after an update. It
had an update. Well, mine was the same. The MG5 on mine was the same. I had mine done 6 months ago now, 5 or 6 months ago now, and it was just an update. There was no new parts went into it, but nowadays we seem to be saying there's new parts required.
In answer to this, so I asked my friend who's the engineer at MG Longbridge, and I said, what's going on with this? Because originally we were told that it just needs a software update, and then originally we were doing it under warranty, and then MG said it's not classed as a warranty upgrade. You have to pay for the workshop time, which we had this discussion last time. And then they've come out and said you can't change on pre-facelift cars. You can't just do a software update. It needs a new EVCC, EV charge controller, which is a physical bit of hardware that needs bolting in.
So that's, as I understand it, that's the bit that talks to the external charger, talks CCS, talks the protocols, communicates with the outside charger. Yeah.
So the software apparently wouldn't do it. This is on the MG5 long range cars, pre-facelift, so the older style looking MG5s. Anyway, so I asked my mate Mark, who works at engineering, I said, is this the case? Why do they? Because some people have had an update and it works, and some people have been told that they can't have an update and it won't work. And that they need to spend £800 on a new EVCC. So what's going on? And he says there should only be a small handful of cars from the early production of the long-range MG5 where they've got this EVCC that isn't compatible even with the software update, and therefore they would need the change. But not every car needs that changing. So they're supposed to be putting out a bulletin.
It's a batch issue or something. Is it the first batch?
Yeah, it's a different product. Yeah, so basically the early cars were made with a different supplier of the EVCC. Or a different chip, a different board inside it, whatever. But it's and there should be a different part number. But what has happened is that this bulletin has gone out to all dealers saying basically they need new EVCC. It shouldn't be the case. There should be a replacement. So they're going to send out a new bulletin to dealers apparently and say, if the part number is X, then it's going to need changing. If it's Y, then it doesn't. It just needs a software update, which makes more sense.
Well, that's progress, yeah.
But this will still be chargeable?
It'll still be chargeable because it's seen as an enhancement rather than as a warranty fault. Now,
I've always disputed that. I've always disputed that. This announcement is ridiculous.
I agree with you, mate. I agree with you. So, so MG is saying that it's not a warranty issue. It's not a fault. It's an enhancement they've made because previously Tesla, at the time when the car was launched, Tesla chargers were locked to Tesla. They weren't open to all manufacturers.
True.
And so at the time they couldn't test the vehicle on those networks, and therefore it wasn't ever designed to work with those networks. So that's their excuse as to why, argument as to why it's an enhancement rather than a warranty issue. However, I still think you're right, Les. But that doesn't get me paid. So in terms of
I understand.
Someone has to pay for the work.
I understand. I know what you're saying. Is there? Do you know? I don't really know this or not, Mark. Is there any way you can tell which might not be updatable or which may need the new EVCC from the VIN numbers?
I haven't got that information, and I'm hoping that in the bulletin it'll tell us a way in which to say that. And then if I find that information out, I'll put it on the forum because it'll save you guys having to go into workshops at all. You can look and if you can look under the bonnet and see a sticker, or you can check from the VIN number.
Yeah, you have to look at the windscreen, don't you? It's there. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's related to VIN numbers, that would be easy.
If it's VIN number, it'll be easy. If it's not on VIN number, but it's on the product code that's stuck on the car, on the actual car, if there's a sticker on the actual EVCC, and we can take a photo of it and we can say this is where you need to check, then yeah, ideal.
So that,
and if I get that,
that would be helpful.
That's on the 5. But for the ZS, is it a similar issue with the new hardware, or is it just a software update? Because there's also obviously
software update on the facelift cars. I don't know.
Right.
The pre-facelift cars are actually compatible at all. I don't know if there's an update for those at all, but for the facelift ZS EV, that is updatable to work with Tesla superchargers. It's massively frustrating for me because I agree with what you're saying, Les, and I've sent emails to MG.
I know you do. I know you've done a lot. You've done a hell of a lot more than I'm grateful to you for it.
Yeah.
So
and some dealers are doing this. So there was a poll on the ZS forum recently about this. 60% of people got the update free for their cars. I mean, this is not MG5, but it's a similar software issue. 12% were asked to pay, and 30% didn't take it, which I assume means they were offered it but didn't want to pay for it. So that's an indication that even if it's chargeable, some dealers are swallowing the cost.
And I think it'll depend on how busy the workshops are and how, if you've got, like, our workshops at the moment are sort of booked up well over a month in advance. So
I was going to ask about that. So since you brought that up, let's move on to talk about that. So I am hearing a lot of people on the forums across different models of MG EV say that parts are taking a long time, which I don't think is new. That's always been the case. Although I'm a bit confused because we were supposed to be having a big UK parts centre set up, but I still hear people ordering from that and it taking 10 days to come through. And then I'm also hearing I can't get my car in to have it fixed until July, August. That sort of thing. So what's driving that? Is that the closure of these dealers? What's happening? Because we talked about this around Christmas and the problems of Christmas, but this is now summer period, isn't it?
So 95% of parts are available next day from MG.
Okay.
5% aren't.
That's good to know.
It's Sod's law that the 5% that you need are the ones that are
available.
So oil filters, wiper blades, next day.
Yeah.
No, there's 95% of parts are available next day, and I think 98% are available within 1 week. So we have a European parts centre which can ship parts across to UK quite quickly as well. There are some parts which, particularly on new launch models, like for example the MG3 Hybrid Plus, they just physically haven't got the stocks in the showroom in the warehouses yet. They've ordered them, but a lot of the parts are being used to build new cars rather than actually making spares. So I suppose if you're a car manufacturer, you're hoping that everything's going to go right with the car first thing. And it's a bit like we had obviously the issue, Tom, with your onboard charger, wasn't it? So
the CCU.
Yeah. So with your onboard charger, you had the issue where, and we had a lot of cars with the same issue where basically they wouldn't charge on AC. We required a replacement part. It was a fault which did nothing for a year or so of ownership, and then suddenly they all failed at once. And MG was caught having to try and initially they were going to air freight them, but then when it came to the point of okay, we don't just need 2 or 3, we need 200. They have to ship them in a container, and it's going to take a month or 2 to get across. So I think that they've that sort of thing can catch them on a hop. And I know from previous employment with another manufacturer, where I was involved with actually sort of the maintenance of the library of spare parts and everything that we had, the inventory. There were some parts that you'd order in when the car was brand new, and 5 years later they're still sat on the shelf and never moved.
You don't want to fill the shelves with parts that never used.
You're paying for that shelf space. You've got to decide.
The only people you're helping in the classic car market when they want to restore their cars and they can still get 30, 40, 50-year-old parts.
There's often a problem with inventory is that you get everything in at the start. Let's say okay, we get enough bits to make 5 whole cars from bits, but invariably what ends up therefore is that you've got 95% of parts you don't need, and the couple of percent that you do need, you need a lot more than 5. So
okay. So what about the busyness of the garages? Because again, this has heard a lot that I can't get my car at an appointment.
Massively at the moment, car dealerships have got a problem with recruitment and retention of technicians. Part of this is due to not enough young people wanting to go into training to be mechanics. Certainly not as many as they used to be. Part of this is due to the fact that nowadays it's a different skill set to how it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a lot more obviously electronics based, a lot more computer based. And traditionally, and I say this with great affection because I used to work in a job where I was training garage mechanics daily. People became garage mechanics because they didn't like school. They typically, they were better with their hands. They wanted a manual job. They wanted to work with their hands, and tuning up a carburetor by ear, or moving heavy stuff.
Very true.
It was the job that it was more suited to their skill set. And today, the role of a garage technician is totally different to those of a traditional mechanic, where you just had a big spanner and a hammer and a bit of WD.
I guess it's now plug in the computer and know how to work the computer, go through all the menus.
So it's
software settings.
I think that we're really struggling, and the industry is really struggling to recruit and retain staff because there's such competition between dealerships for good quality staff that you can have someone you'll train up as a master technician and they'll be earning a good salary, and then someone else will come in and say, okay, the Audi dealer down the road or whatever will say, okay, well, one of old Bob's retired now and we need to get another body in there. Let's go get some. And they find that there's a bidding war for staff, and they're just coming and poaching them, and sometimes offering 5-10 grand more. And it's the justification of well, can we recruit anyone else to replace them if we do go? And are we going to be let's say they were earning 40 grand a year as a mechanic. Can we afford to pay them 45 or 50 grand? Or if we don't, if we put them up to 45, 50 grand, then everybody else is going to want the same thing. So it increases all the costs and everything. So as a business, it's really, really tough. And I think that as well, we've had a lot of post-COVID, quite a lot of garage mechanics also decided that maybe they didn't want to be mechanics anymore and they wanted to go and do, truck driving for Asda or whatever. And so there's a lot of people
That's true.
different industries like that. So it's tough when it's the retention of staff and the recruitment of new staff is really, really tough, and that's why we've got such long lead times. Because
for both, I guess what we're saying is don't hate on the dealers so much, because it's mainly not their fault. They're not responsible for being able to ship the parts, and they're struggling to recruit. So to have a thought for some of the pressures they're going through.
We would prefer to have people able to call up and say, I've got a problem with the car, great, bring it in tomorrow. But the truth is that we're probably working about 4 to 6 weeks in advance at the moment.
Yeah, but it's not because you can't be bothered, or you don't take the customer seriously. It's because you haven't got the staff.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on a little bit to talk about MG4 specific things. There's a couple of good things I want to call out. There's a really vibrant Australian and I think New Zealand, well, it's titled Australian MG4 thread, that has become one of the biggest threads that we have. And so there seems to be some amazing sales down under. And so if any of you from down under, from Australia, from New Zealand, or around that area, if you'd like to join in with a future podcast, do get in touch and let us know. We'd love to have a wider variety of voices. And also, there's a Bulgarian MG4 owner. Some of you may have seen this, Chimol, who bought a crashed MG4. There's a fascinating thread that you can see there where he's been restoring it himself, trying to get manuals, figure out getting hold of parts, put pieces back together, repair the car as best he can. And it's fascinating because there's lots of photos and pictures in a kind of diary of his efforts. And so he's actually been rebuilding one himself, which is quite fascinating. So it's good to have people like that interested in the MG4. And we've learned in that thread that the Bulgarian roads are not what we might hope for. I know we have a lot of problems with our own roads, but apparently they're even worse, if you can believe that. Apart from that, the MG4, I think the main themes around a few AC and DC charging issues tend to be related to the CCU, which we've talked enough about before. Software updates is probably the most common thing. Release 59, I think, is the latest for long range owners, and 33 for standard range. But again, some people report release 59 being available, some not. Some report it works brilliantly, some report it doesn't. So I think what we're learning is you need to have the right combination of car module updates and infotainment put together on the car to get a good stable result.
I think they're just infotainment.
I guess nothing has really changed on that. Sorry, go ahead.
I think they're just infotainment versions you're quoting there, aren't they?
Yeah, those numbers are. Yeah, that's right. But what people seem to be saying is some people get a new release and it fixes loads of problems and it's great, and some people get a new release and it introduces a whole bunch of new problems.
Right.
And that does seem to be about whether you've had the corresponding updates. Sometimes the infotainment might depend on something else in the car, and vice versa. At least that's as far as I can gather. I mean, I guess, Miles, the system hasn't changed. It's the usual story we've talked about before.
Yeah. So in terms of infotainment software and other modules, it's still the same process of plugging in a laptop and doing it the long way. What I would possibly say is that, when we're talking about, you say different modules might sometimes cause errors. Of course, the infotainment system is where you can tune a lot of other systems in terms of your autonomous braking, in terms of your lane changing and all that sort of stuff. All those options are in the infotainment. And so if there is a software variation between one of those modules and the infotainment, it can sometimes create
problems.
Problems in communication. So obviously, if you've got problems with the software, take it back to your dealer and get them to sort it under warranty. And it might involve installing some updates, but they'll get the first thing that they should do is basically take a snapshot of what version numbers there are, and then they send that off to MG, and MG will say, "Oh yeah, well you got version 59. You're supposed to have this, and this updated in order for that to work properly." And then they'll come back. So it's not just a blind install everything and hope for the best. It's more a case of tell MG what's currently on there, and they'll sort it out from there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be the best advice. I mean, telling people to be very specific with what the car is doing, take in a written record of their problem, try and make sure it gets to the technician, and ask the dealer to test again whatever problem they're expecting a fix for before they get the car back. Because we have had some people say they give the car back and it still doesn't work, or the problem is still there. So it's the usual advice there. But it would be great, as we said earlier, if there was a better system. But we'll live in hope. The one new thing on the MG4 is we're seeing a few more reports of automatic emergency braking causing people problems. And I've had this happen, and it tends to happen at very low speed. So I've never had it happen at 30 miles an hour, but I've had it happen at 5 to 10 miles an hour. And suddenly the car just slams on. There's nothing there, but suddenly the car just slams on the brakes and you stop. And
Is it beeping
fortunately,
beforehand?
there's been nothing behind. Sorry?
Is it beeping before it does the slamming brakes, or is it just slamming the brakes?
I've had the beeping separately where it doesn't do anything. It's just a warning. That tends to be when I know that I'm going to turn the wheel, and it wants me to turn it
Yeah,
sooner,
like
but
you're
I can't
overtaking a
because of
parked car, but
the
you haven't indicated, so it just
yeah.
plowing
No,
through that.
this is it just no warning, just goes bang, and you just stop. It's very effective. I mean, that's a good thing. But uh, various people have been reporting this, and obviously it's alarming. And if there was somebody right behind you going too fast, you potentially could have an accident.
Yeah,
Have you heard anything on this?
I've not heard anything myself on this. I mean, I've had a
Okay.
similar instance in my Hyundai Ioniq that I'm driving at the moment. I think all of the AEB, I mean, the AEB system comes from Bosch, and they basically provide all of the braking systems for all the manufacturers. So it's basically an identical system in all new cars. So, whereas there's calibration that can be done, and certainly if you're experiencing, these ghost braking events, it would be worth checking asking your dealer to check if the calibration is correct, because if the radar's point, if it's been knocked and it's pointing down slightly or whatever, it could be that it's picking up something not in.
I mean, I've been straight out to clean it because in case that's the problem.
I mean, I had it the other day when I was driving down. It was sod's law, and I had to drive like 250 miles in a day on the motorway, and I got a leaf. I was about to just I got on the motorway, a leaf or some plastic bag or something blew across the front of my bumper and blocks the radar sensor, and then it wouldn't let obviously autonomous braking or the self auto cruise control, the smart cruise control. None of that would function because the radar couldn't see anything. So I ended up having to pull over onto the hard shoulder, literally pull a wet leaf off the front of the car, and then turn it back on, and everything was fine. But it's surprising how that that little veiny leaf was enough to block the car from doing anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they can be sensitive. These systems are complicated. So yeah, all right. Well, I'll report it to my dealer, as everybody should. Last thing then on these hot topics, the X-Power, the perennial vibration hum issue. Now, some people have managed to almost dial it out by changing tires, balancing wheels, strapping various bits to the suspension and balancing things in the car and God knows what. But others are still struggling with the problem. Again, we have rumours of a change to the suspension, either coming on new cars, but it's just rumours, and I'm not sure we can trust that there's anything concrete. And again, some cars are just fine. And for those that don't know, this is vibration or hum when you go between 65 and 75, which can seem either quite strange or quite alarming, depending on the severity of what you feel through the steering wheel, through the seat. Have you heard anything? Has there been any bulletins related to this that have come?
There's not been any bulletins out from MG. We've heard various reports, but as I said before, sometimes it can be tricky because it's not affecting every car, and it's not. Some people report a buzz, some people report a vibration, some people are shaking. Some it's different for different people, and I think that at the moment I haven't got any news on it. I haven't experienced it myself when I was driving an X-Power, which makes it harder obviously for me to be able to comment. I'll refer back to Mark at Long Vision, see if I can get anywhere with that.
That'd be good, just to know if there is anything coming, because it kind of gets perennially rumored. And it's the one thing that I mean, everyone loves their car. It's just those that have this report it as the thing that annoys them the most. Great. Okay. Thank you, guys. Well, I think that's us done for tonight. So thank you, everybody, and thanks for coming. A reminder that you can find the audio version of this podcast on all good podcast providers. Just search for MG EVs Community Podcast. That's it for us tonight. Thank you to the volunteer moderators who keep our forums running smoothly. That's Alb, A Real Human, Coulomb, and Rolf. And many thanks from Stuart to the podcasters who give up their evenings to share their wisdom with the community, which is us, I guess. Particularly thanks to me, of course, for collating the hot topics. My thanks go to everyone tonight. So Les, thank you very much, Les, and Vince,
Thank you very much,
and
Tom.
Miles
Thank you.
for coming
Done a
along.
good job.
And a final reminder, if you found this podcast useful, please click on the like button. And if you subscribe and click on the notification bell, you'll get notified next time we go live, which is particularly useful because we sometimes have to change it at the last minute. So we'll be back soon, and please keep us updated on any items you wish to discuss. And we're still very keen to welcome MG EV owners outside the UK to join us on the podcast and liven up things. Great. Lovely talking to you all. Take care and goodbye.